Chicago, 1891. A man built a 3-story building on the corner of 63rd and Wallace. He fired every construction worker before they could learn enough to understand what they were building. He did this deliberately. The 1893 World's Fair brought 27 million visitors to Chicago. 27 million people flooding into a city that did not yet know all their names. Young women arriving alone, looking for work, looking for a new life. In a city so large, so full of strangers, that if you disappeared, it might be weeks before anyone noticed. His name was Herman Webster Mudgett. He called himself Dr. H. Holmes. And the building he constructed, the one he designed himself, the one whose workers he dismissed before any single one of them could see the whole picture, he called it the World's Fair Hotel. The hotel built to kill.
Holmes was born in New Hampshire in 1861. By any measure of his time, a remarkable man. Charming, educated, a medical degree from the University of Michigan. He was also, from a very early age, a person for whom other people existed primarily as resources. Before Chicago, there had been fraud in New York, insurance schemes in multiple states, a wife abandoned with a child, a second marriage, bigamous, businesses dissolved under suspicious circumstances. Holmes moved through the world like a man who understood that charm was a door, and that most people never thought to check what was on the other side of it. In Chicago, he took a job at a pharmacy. The pharmacist who owned it, a man named E.S. Holton, went missing. Holmes claimed he had simply moved away. His body was never found. Holmes became the sole owner of the pharmacy. He began buying the empty lot across the street. He had plans.
Here is what Holmes built. And here is what makes it different from every other building on that street. The first floor, shops. A pharmacy. Jewelers. Other retail. Ordinary. Unremarkable. The kind of ground floor that makes a building look legitimate. The second floor was different. Rooms with no windows. Doors designed to lock. From the outside, gas pipes running through the walls, connected to a valve controlled from Holmes's own office. Soundproofed walls. Secret passages connecting rooms that had no other connection. The basement contained a kiln large enough for a human body. Vats of acid. A dissection table. And a chute descending from the floors above
to deliver things to the basement that did not need to use the stairs. Holmes rotated his construction workers constantly. No single worker ever stayed long enough to understand the full design. He would accuse them of poor work, refuse payment, dismiss them before the section was complete, hire new workers for the next section. The Chicago Tribune later wrote that the building was the queerest house in all America. Its chimneys stuck out where chimneys should never stick out. because the man who designed it was the only person who understood what every room was for. He called it the World's Fair Hotel. He placed advertisements. He hired young women as stenographers and secretaries. He became engaged to several of them simultaneously. He required his employees to take out life insurance policies, naming him as beneficiary.
Now, I want to be careful here. The mythology around H.H. Holmes has become enormous. 200 victims, 300, a labyrinth of death traps that no historian has been able to fully verify. The truth is disturbing enough without the exaggeration. Historians today believe Holmes killed approximately 9 people, possibly more, possibly fewer. His first likely victim, Julia Connor, had been his mistress. She disappeared around Christmas 1891. Her 6-year-old daughter Pearl disappeared with her. Holmes claimed Julia died during an illegal medical procedure. Neither of their bodies was ever recovered. During the World's Fair of 1893, Holmes moved through the crowds with the ease of a man who understood something the crowds did not. That in a city of 27 million visitors, young women traveling alone, young women new to the city, young women who had not yet written home, were extraordinarily difficult to trace. In the ashes of the building's kiln, investigators later found a small gold chain from a woman's shoe, bones, a garter buckle, a watch chain, objects that had belonged to people who had walked into that building and had not walked out. Holmes later wrote, and I will not give him the poetry of a direct quote, that he believed he had been born with the capacity for evil, the way others were born with the capacity for music. He did not say this with remorse.
Holmes fled Chicago in 1894. He was eventually arrested in Boston, not for the murders, but for insurance fraud. The investigation that followed was not what anyone expected. When investigators entered the building, they found the gas pipes, the sealed rooms, the soundproofed walls, the chute to the basement, the kiln, the acid vats. They found human remains. In the ashes of the kiln, scattered through the building, enough to suggest that the building had been used for exactly the purpose it appeared to have been designed for. Holmes was tried and convicted, not for the murders in Chicago, but for the murder of his associate, Benjamin Peitzel, in Philadelphia.
He confessed to 27 murders, then later 130. Several of the people he named were later found to be alive. Nobody was certain which confessions were true and which were fabrications designed to keep the world talking about him. He was hanged on May 7, 1896. Before his execution, he made one final request. He asked that his coffin be filled with cement. He said he was afraid someone would dig him up and study his remains, the way he had studied others. The request was granted.
The building burned in 1895, while Holmes was in prison, under circumstances never fully explained. It stood, damaged, until 1938. Then it was demolished. The site today is a post office. People walk past it every day. Mail goes in, mail comes out. The ground beneath it has never been fully excavated. Holmes understood something that most people never had to learn, that the most dangerous things rarely announce themselves, that charm is a door, and that what is on the other side of it is not always what you were told.
The next story begins in the dark. Subscribe to uncover it.